Good afternoon, everybody. It's 4:18 p.m. and I'm on a fury here. It's 4:18 p.m. Saturday, September 18th. Okay, enough of that. Oxalate toxicity in renal cells. What is this abstract? Well, I'm going to walk you through it and show you how oxalates turn off your immune system, remap your genetic makeup, disrupt your mitochondrial function, and decrease cell viability. Because that's what they do. Let us begin. Exposure to oxalate, a constituent of the most common form of kidney stones, like I said before, generates toxic responses in renal epithelial cells. Now, if you don't know what renal epithelial cells are, that's your liver and your kidneys, okay? Including altered membrane surface properties and cellular lipids, changes in gene expression. Changes in gene expression means your DNA is being altered. Disruption of mitochondria function means each and every one of your cells in your body has a mitochondria. You receive that from your mother's side of the family. Now, what happens is when you disrupt the mitochondria, it's sort of like taking a wrench and throwing it into a running engine. It's gonna mess the engine up. Or better yet, it's like taking sand and pouring it in the carburetor. Formation of reactive oxygen species and decreased cell viability. What does that mean? That means oxygen and CO2 aren't crossing the cell membrane efficiently because oxalates damage it. And you're decreasing cell viability, which means you're mutating or inhibiting a cell dividing in two and creating its successor. Oxalate exposure activates PLA2, which increases two lipid signaling molecules, LYSOPC, PLA2. These are the two lipid signaling molecules, anachronic acid, and this one, it's got such a long name, I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce it. Those two lipid molecules, signaling molecules, are telling your body to turn off its immune system to stop the inflammation from the high oxalate content you're eating. You'll see that later. PLA inhibition blocks where exogenesis, lysol, PC, or anachronic acid reproduce many of the effects of oxalate on the mitochondria function. So those two lipids are the sand in the engine, so to say. And they're responsible for the gene expression and the cell viability being changed. This is oxalate exposure also elicits potentially adaptive or protective changes that increase expression of proteins that may prevent crystal formation or attachment. Of course, that now the oxalates are in there, they're going to trigger something in there from the liver. I believe it's an enzyme from the liver to dissolve those oxalates, the RAFEs. Additional adaptive responses may facilitate removal and replacement of dead or damaged cells. So now that the oxalates have done their damage, the body's going to respond by trying to fix it. You know, the crystals are flowing through you, they're damaged, cutting you up. It's like small glass shards going through your body, RAFEs. Oxalates go into the body, they combine with calcium or other minerals, and they turn into like these little glass-like shards, and they're flowing through your body, and they're making microcuts all through your body. The presence of different inflammatory cells and the molecules in the kidneys of rats with hyperoxaluria in stone patients suggests that inflammatory responses play roles in stone disease. So they're saying that the inflammatory response called upon by the body to deal with these oxalates is really going to start the stone process. Renal epithelial cells can synthesize a variety of cytokines, chemoattractants, and other molecules with the potential to interfere with inflammatory cells. So now what's going to happen is the body's going to say, hey, look, we got too much inflammation going on. We're going to have to react to that, those inflammatory cells. Moreover, oxalate exposure increases the synthesis of these molecules. Again, those two are the two lipid molecules that are fucking up your mitochondria and causing all the problems, as I explained in the beginning. The present studies demonstrate the oxalate exposure upregulates cyclogenase 2, which catalyzes the rate-limiting step in the synthesis of prostanoids compounds derived from, of course, atachronic acid. We read about atachronic acid at the beginning. It's one of the two lipid signaling molecules that can modify crystal binding and may influence inflammation. So now you got anachronic acid responding to the oxalate input, and that in turn causes the inflammation. Easy to understand so far, for me, In addition, renal cell oxalate exposure promotes rapid degradation of I-kappa-A alpha, an endogenous inhibitor of NF-kappa B transcriptive factor. A similar response is observed following renal cell exposure to LPS, a bacterial cell wall component that activates toll-like receptor 4 TLR. Okay, so now we're getting an immune response and an inflammation response. That's what that means. Why TLRs are primarily associated with immune cells. There you go. They're also found on many other cell types, including renal epithelial cells, suggesting that TLR signaling could directly impact renal function. So now those two lipids and the response of the oxalates in your body, you're going to get TLR signaling, and you're going to get direct impact on your renal function. Prior exposure of renal epithelial cells to oxalate in vitro produces endotoxin tolerance, i.e., a loss of response to LPS. Now, where do we see LPS before? LPS is what triggers what? What did we learn? Your immune system. If you want to read it again, go ahead. And conversely, prior to exposure to LPS elicits a similar heterologous desensitization to oxalate. Like I said, to deal with the oxalates, your body has to desensitize to it to prevent inflammation. So it turns your autoimmune system, turns your immune system off. Renal cell desensitization to oxalate stimulation may have profound effects on the outcome of renal stone disease by impairing protective responses. What are your protective responses? Everybody? Your immune system. That's all it took, is a brief reading of the abstract to understand what's going on here. They gave you the two lipids that signal the body to begin inflaming the renal cell tissue because of oxalate irritation. So the body, on the other hand, goes, look, we can't stay in a inflammatory state. We're going to have to deal with this inflammation caused by the oxalates by turning off the LPS and raising our tolerance to oxalates. And what does it do? It's impairing your protective responses from your immune system. And that's it. So vegans, good luck on debunking that.